I think we've all realized the McSilver Institute is a unique institution. And working here with my colleagues who are sitting around the table really helped me build the bridge between what is research, social work practices, and community-based work, engaging both all of our stakeholders and partners. It is through this partnership with organizations and agencies that we are able to hold our system accountable and use research as a heart of our mission. And so I'm especially honored to present the last but not least final award this evening to someone whose work in the nonprofit and government sectors has been driven and defined by community needs. Tracie Gardner has spent 30 years advocating for just public policies for people living with HIV and AIDS, individuals entangled with the criminal justice system, and people living with addiction. Ladies and gentlemen, the New York State Assistant Secretary of Health, Tracie Gardner.
I wrote these words for everyone who's
I've always wanted walk-on music, yes. Lauryn Hill, yes. Oh, wow. Thank you. I'm waiting for the punked. Makes no sense. It does. It actually does. So, and thank you. I'd like to congratulate my co-honorees. I know you. I know your work. The connectedness is amazing. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to be honored by you. And thank you, McSilver, for recognizing not me, but the work that has called me. I have just been doing my passion for 30 years because the personal is what makes people give a damn. It is. And that's our struggle, is to impress upon people that you are touched and affected by what's going on. There is no other. I lost my childhood friend to HIV in 1985, and I was galvanized. I was outraged. I burned. I couldn't believe it. So HIV became personal for me. Sex education was personal for me. I grew up in a town in western Massachusetts where the teenage pregnancy rate was like, people didn't know their belly buttons from their you-know-whats. The health of women of color was personal. I have armies of aunts who absolutely refused to seek prenatal care because they said, I ain't sick, I'm just having a baby. But they were also very suspicious of the healthcare system, and they had good reason to be. So, I'm an advocate. That's me, bottom line, through and through. It's like you can't be halfway pregnant. I'm not halfway an advocate. And I'm only recently a bureaucrat, and I need people to know that. 3 months. I think that this acknowledgement, I'd like to believe, is for a number of us, HIV was the social justice issue. It brought things together. It was the lens. It was our education. Brutally, swiftly, we understood the have and the have-nots, who was dirty, who was clean, who mattered, who didn't. And what also became really apparent was that HIV was opportunistic not only in its pathology, but also in its social impact, that it showed everywhere we were lacking, everything that we didn't do well, all of the ways that we were letting down people, HIV emerged. So poverty and HIV, despite the fact that this was thought to be the scourge of wealthy white gay men, poverty and HIV have been hand in hand from the very beginning. So even as it fueled my anger and my drive, and even as it introduced me to how neglect and skewed priorities kill young men of color. That was my experience in the late 80s, is watching beautiful brown and golden-skinned men die, who were my age or a little bit older, covered with lesions at St. Vincent's Hospital or some HHC hospital with no one to visit, no one to touch them. And I knew then, no, I'm not going to stand by and watch this happen. And so I couldn't. So it taught me, and I grew up and was embraced by and taught by a burgeoning LGBTQ community that had to assert itself or be brushed aside. It taught me about the vulnerability of young men of color, women and children of color as the barometer of the health of a community. When you didn't do right by the women and children, your community was going to die. And stigma around sex and drug use and poverty, and of course, it's jail and prison, stupid. The great unraveler of all of our forward-thinking policies undercut by the mass warehousing of young male Black and brown bodies. And in the midst of this, I had sons. And then it got really real. I went to all girls high school. I went to all women's college. I was gonna have girls. And then, so it got really real and it got really personal. And it continues to be. There's so much to do. I am not going to curl up and fear when my sons leave my apartment. They know what mommy does. They know I'm a big mouth. There's a viral video going around, some of you may have seen, of the mom who is slapping the living hell out of her son who has a mask on, right? So that's not how we used to protest. We didn't protest with masks, so he was up to no good. And I'm not a fan of violence, and I'm not a fan of corporal punishment, but her terror and her rage were completely understandable to those of us who love these men. What are you doing? How do we help you? How do we protect you? So, it's been a really interesting year. I'm turning a age, and it's bringing a lot of insight. I have had the enormous privilege of working with some of the most wonderful not-for-profits, doing work, mission-driven work. And I am very aware that I stand on so many amazing shoulders who are here in this room, who've come before us, who've gone along. And I'm just happy for the acknowledgement that I'm a pair of shoulders that others, I'm hoping, are standing on. So I thank you for this acknowledgement. Are you walking me off the stage? Put on your pajamas, I've just gotten started. I thank you for this acknowledgement, and I will continue to fight the fight. Thank you.